So let's talk about UK prisons. But before we get to that, we have to talk about why the UK prisons are in a state that they are in. And once again, it's no surprise, it's austerity. the pretty much everything that is the problem in the UK at the moment all can be tracked back to austerity. It's the usual Tory problem that we always have of you need to spend this amount of money to maintain infrastructure, to build new facilities, to maintain current facilities, and yet the Tories came along and went, well, we don't really want to do that. We'd rather slash the price and do more with less, guys. You can do that, right? Of course, when it comes to prisons, what this has really meant is a dramatic reduction in staff. But what it actually meant was a dramatic reduction in terms of staff pay. That was the key point, that the prison wardens had a drastic reduction in their pay. And at the time when this first happened and came in, many saw this as the writing on the wall of what was going to happen, that if they were now being paid less, where in some situations and indeed in some prisons they felt that their lives might be on a daily basis just being a warden in these prisons, was it worth it? Was it really worth it continuing on being in this position? And I have one of my cousin's friends knows someone who is in that position. He used to be a prison warden. I think it was in one of the Wakefield wardens in somewhere. And when that happened, he was like, "Well, why? Why should I continue on where my pay has been drastically slashed in a position that is quite dangerous, that has a lot of roles and responsibilities?" And he went on to, I think, eventually become a train driver. So he had a drastic change of career because of that impact of austerity that was slashing not only just prison budgets, which was the pay that the wardens got, but across the board, this happened. So finally, once again, the chickens are coming home to roost, and it is the austerity rooster now crowing, very very much so. And they were warned time and time again, if you do this, there will be these consequences. And of course, they were like, no, that'll be fine because we'll only be doing austerity for 4-5 years, and then everything will be all rosy and golden. But of course, that's never what the Tories did. They just continued on and on and on and went even harder on austerity. And you've had prime ministers, even now, Sunak, Liz Truss, all, even Boris Johnson, even though he said, I don't want to hear the word austerity, um, bizarrely enough, actually committed to these same paths of defunding these things. But it's so bizarre from a party that is the party of law and order. Because if you think it's not just police, it's the courtrooms, and it's of course the prisons. Those are like the three pillars of the whole justice system. It's catching, sentencing, and holding slash rehabilitation. And because that has been drastically defunded, you've had that. And there was someone on Sky News commenting who'd actually been, we've got a big manhunt on, if you've seen recently in the UK. The guy who's escaped from one of the prisons, one of the people who used to be in there said, this place is, completely unfit for purpose. But as a prisoner, he was responsible for hosting the prison roll. So he would be responsible for taking register. So if you were, or if he was maybe someone who was less unscrupulous, this guy who had potentially escaped, if he'd had an ally on the inside still, could have just, yeah, he's still here. Meanwhile, he's legging it to who knows where, because obviously they still haven't caught him yet. They don't know where he is. But if they'd had someone on the inside, he could have just ticked him off on the register and just let him be who knows how long before someone had realized he'd escaped. So this is yet a key point where once again these people, this entire situation is a situation and a disaster of the Tory party unfolding, going all the way back to the beginning of austerity, told point blankly many times. You can go over news articles, BBC interviews, whatever, at the time of these people being interviewed saying, well, how are you going to deal with these cuts? And they've all had the same response. Well, we're not going to deal with them very well at all. Police officers off the record were saying, yeah, well, on the record, they were saying these cuts are going to be bad. And off the record, they were saying, no, these are going to be absolutely catastrophic. We've seen the justice system defunded to such a point. We've now got massive backlogs in the courts, not obviously helped by COVID, which has jammed up that backlog even more with cases going back to 2017. And I always say this when we cover this, if you want to know how bad our court system really is, go follow The Secret Barrister or go read their book just to see how bad austerity has really hit a very crucial part of what should be the justice system, and then the prisons themselves. And the prisons often don't really get too much of a look in, unfortunately. But with this massive manhunt going on, it's actually drawn a line on actually what are the state of UK prisons. And James O'Brien had a phone in yesterday, and I think he was told by a lot of people, yeah, these prisons, they're not fit for purpose anymore. Why? Because they've been underfunded, understaffed for years. And yet we've got the party of, quote, law and order in charge. Yeah. It's not very good at all currently. And something like this current manhunt we've got going on just draws a line and puts a limelight on these prisons at last, saying, oh, look, the state of UK prisons. Yeah, they're not very good at all. So, as always, thank you very much, of course, for coming along and watching. And of course, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. There is, of course, the YouTube thank you button and the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.